first story. And today, guys, like I said, we're going to talk about the Team USA. We know that these rosters have been made up long time ago. We're finally getting into the swing of things for the Team USA FIBA Basketball World Cup. The Women's World Cup is just ending, but the boys or men's basketball is just beginning. So the roster goes as follows. We got Paolo Banchero, who originally was going to play for Italy, but ended up switching to USA. You got Mikal Bridges, you got Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, Jaren Jackson Jr., Cam Johnson, Walker Kessler, Bobby Portis, and Austin Reeves. And that is when it's going to start. It's going to start August 25th through September 10th. And they are going to be in the locations of Indonesia, Japan, and the Philippines for this World Cup of Basketball. All right, Pete. Let's start off with the first question before we get into really talking about probably the juicier story that people are probably going to be in here for, which is, of course, that Cade Cunningham absolutely destroyed this team when they played against each other. And we'll talk about obviously the starting five that they had. But what is your opinion on this roster? Do you think it's strong enough? Are we getting to a point now where, the older players are starting to kind of exit out, and now you have these other, I would even say younger than the players that were there before, guys like Zach LaVine, Jason Tatum, Devin Booker, like those guys were the ones that, they brought home the gold. But they've kind of, I would say, taken a step back and let these even younger guys with some veterans here and there join this team. So what's your opinion on this roster?
I think I like it more than most people do. I've seen a lot of people saying this is like the B teams, a lot of scrub like guys relative to what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what international basketball has become for the United States. It's kind of a one and done type situation,
Right.
like in terms of the quality of player that actually wants to go, right? I think it's like a different proposition nowadays than it used to be. It used to be more a matter of like this is your obligation as a member of the United States population and just like an elite basketball player. That's clearly not the case. I mean, we would have seen people like Kevin Durant would have continued, for a long time playing on the United States team, obviously, amongst other people, LeBron, all these guys.
Right.
Um, but I also think one thing that's important to note about.
Oh, Pete, you still there? Then we lost him for a second. Um, I guess I can go while Pete's still connecting. I don't know if it's my side or his side. Let me just make sure it's not my side, and you guys can still watch the stream. I don't want to interrupt any flow. Oh, I think you're back now.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. It said Discord had some crazy RTC disconnection error. All
Mm-hmm.
right, regardless, what I was saying is just like it seems like a cultural shift in what the NBA is actually, or what the United States basketball team is looking for, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't want to step on my segment later, so I won't lead
The
into it
prelude, prelude,
too much.
prelude.
But I will talk about a guy that I think is interesting in the case that he's not there, and that's Trey Young, right? Like there's reports out there that he wanted to be on this Team USA team, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
not there. There are a lot of people that would argue just on its face that he would be the best player on the team. He would definitely be better than Jalen Brunson, a proven guy, right? But I think that this is what this team is not looking for that, right? Like they're looking for
Mm-hmm.
chemistry. They're
Mm-hmm.
looking for a team of guys who obviously pass the ball and are not looking to play isolation basketball. And I think the fact that the guys that are out there are there, like it really Steve Kerr is looking to build a functional basketball team. He is
Mm-hmm.
not trying to put a bunch of guys like your turn, my turn,
Yeah.
because that's not going to work in international basketball the way that these other nations are organized. Like
No.
we've seen that. And I think that that's something that gets super underrated. We send these guys to go play international basketball. We look back at like the Redeem team, right? They needed to redeem themselves because they did poorly the first time around, but it
Right.
was because it was all your turn, my turn. There was no leadership, there was no organizational structure. They weren't running sets, they weren't doing anything. They just thought, we're American, we are the best, we're coming from the best
Mm-hmm.
league in the world. We deserve to win. Like
Right.
it's as simple as that. But that's just not the case. And
Hmm.
I don't know, Bernie. I really like it. I like all the bench guys. I like just the versatility of the team in general. There's a ton of guys who obviously are good locker room dudes, but
Yeah.
also they're just functional players in multiple ways on the court. And I think that that is very interesting for the United States to be looking like that's clearly they're taking that path. It's not even an underlying like I don't think I'm reading into anything. They
Yeah.
clearly chose to do something that way. So what do you think, Bernie?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you. I think in the perspective of again, we saw how the team did in the Olympics the past year, with that Jason Tatum, Zach Levine team, and they struggled, uh, in a sense where it looked a little concerning that they were not going to win the gold medal. Which, anything that you know about U.S. sports, especially when it comes to the Olympics, um, we love our gold medals. Like we want everything. We want to go for the best, be the best. Everything has to be gold, especially in the sports that we dominate in, right? So,
Mhm.
some of the track and field stuff, not as much anymore, but you know what I mean? Like we want to win those events where we basically invented the sport, right? With basketball. But like you said, like the world is getting so much better, and we talked about this, and I've talked about this at nauseum with my friends. They get annoyed every time I talk about it. Basketball is going to become the new game of soccer, like in terms of everybody is going to have access to a hoop. Everyone's going to have access to a court, and that means that there's going to be a lot better players coming from international along with the states. And when that happens, you can't just do like you said, my turn, your turn basketball. And Steve Kerr, and you know him from coaching the San Antonio Spurs and coaching the Golden State Warriors. His basketball style of coaching isn't anything remotely close to your turn, my turn basketball. Because
Mm.
at the end of the day, your turn, my turn basketball, like if you have the dominant players, then yeah, for sure you're gonna win those games. But when you don't have the dominant players, and really what will destroy anybody having the best player in the world, and teams that have played against LeBron James will talk about it, and the San Antonio Spurs are the prime example of it, and even the Golden State Warriors to some extent. You have to play team basketball. Everything has to move. Things have to keep going. You can't just hold on to the ball. And that is kind of what's been the equalizer, I would say, for all these countries around the world playing against the US, especially in this last Olympics and now going into this World Cup. Now more teams are going to be playing more together basketball, more cohesion. Finding the open shot, skipping a good shot for a great shot, right? Thinking about that extra pass like the San Antonio Spurs did in the 2007 NBA Finals against a young LeBron James. Like that to me, um, is what Steve Kerr wants to bring back along with the U.S. because the U.S. can't just win on talent alone anymore because teams are so much better. Like, yes, they're not as athletic as these guys are, but if they are more together, if they know each other's tendencies, if they know, okay, we're going to run this set play, we're making sure that the hammer screen gets set to the corner so that way the corner is wide open for a guy to shoot. There's a lot of good stuff in there that these young players need to understand. As we talk about AAU stuff, and that's another topic for another day that I can get annoyed with. But yeah, I'm just excited to see what this roster can do. I think it's a team, like you said, of young guys who are hungry, who want to prove themselves, and I'm excited to see how this team performs in the World Cup.
Well, and before we get too far off of this, Bernie, like I think something that's really fascinating about this, even beyond just like whatever your personal opinion of this team is, right? I think if you look at the coaching staff that's in place for this team, Steve Kerr, it's Eric Spolstra, it's Ty Lue, it's Mark Few. Okay. Say what you will about Mark Few. He's unproven on the professional level. Okay. And his team never gets it done in March Madness. Beyond the point. Other three guys
Shots
are
fired.
three of the top five coaches in the NBA. Okay.
Hmm.
Without a doubt. And I would argue you have easily the number one coach in Spolstra. And I would say, if not the number two, you have, the third guy, which is Steve Kerr. And then Ty Lue is right there too. Right. These guys assembled this roster. Right.
Yeah.
I find it very humorous that on one front we can, we have as a public, the media and
Hmm.
casual fan can watch the NBA finals and shout until they're blue in the face about how unbelievably underappreciated Eric Spoelstra is as a coach. Look at what he's done with this Miami Heat team. These guys that we doubted all the way from the beginning of the season until game 6 of the NBA Finals, right? Whatever it was. People criticizing this team are people like Gilbert Arenas, right? This is his quote from today that came out. You see that list they got? Sorry ass group, Arena said. I'm sorry. I'm happy for the people who make it. It's cool for some of the guys who got there. Some of them probably don't even start on their teams. I don't know. Like, this is clearly somebody who not only is he's attracted to the numbers, he's attracted to the stardom, the names, right? But there's a reason that Gilbert Arenas isn't coaching the Miami Heat. There's a reason that players like this don't necessarily end up becoming the greatest coaches of all time. Is because it's not as simple as just looking at the surface level and saying, we saw Trae Young in the Eastern Conference Finals. He took the Atlanta Hawks team and beat the Philadelphia 76ers to get there. Okay, that's well and dandy. Has he done it since? Does that change the fact that he has a lot of questions as far as in the locker room, how people respond to him in
Mm-hmm.
terms of all these different things, right? It's just really, I just find it very ironic, how these guys can move the needle or move the goalpost in terms of what they think is like worth celebrating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this roster, there's literally no roster in the world that's going to be better than this FIBA team they have put together already. Is it as good as it would have been with, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Devin Booker, all these guys? No, it's not. But that doesn't change the fact that those types of teams don't always win either. It's just not that simple. There has to be methodology behind the collection of players, and I think that that's something that the layman looking at these teams, or looking at
Mm-hmm.
this team I should say, is just, it's going to go over their head.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys on this team do different things, and that is what's truly important in the NBA is versatility. Look at the Denver Nuggets, the team that just won the championship. They had a player who could do any single thing. Like, you needed this response right here. Okay, Christian Brown, get out on the court. Christian Brown, excuse me. Okay, we need a bigger point guard that's gonna, get Gabe Vincent off the court. Hey, Bruce Brown, go handle the ball for a couple quarters, right? It's just not that simple, man. And I'm very excited to see this team because I actually think they're gonna prove a lot of people wrong in the sense that the chemistry is gonna be great. It already seems to be from what we've heard and seen. Now, honestly, imagine a team, Bernie, with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Trae Young, Steph Curry. Imagine they get dog walked by the select team that came in, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the response then? Response is at that point, well, this is the best we've got. What are we going to do now? And are they going to have the collective, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? The mentality to check themselves and say, you know what? I'm not doing what I need to do for this team to win. I might be Devin Booker, I might be Trae Young, but do I have the ability to step back and look at this from, the top down view of what Coach Kerr wants for me? And I'm not so sure because once you get to the level that those guys are at, nobody tells you that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we're seeing just like the modern response to how inflated the top level players' egos are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the ability to actually have guys that are not at the pinnacle of success, like, you can still check these guys. You can still bench these guys in favor of a younger guy.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that when you have the tippity top of the league. And I think that matters, man. It just really does. And
Yeah.
I just hate when you have guys like Gilbert Arenas out there talking all sorts of craziness. Like, these dudes stepped up to want to play for Team USA. You know? You could say it all day. Why don't we have Kevin Durant or these guys? They have to want to play too.
Yeah.
They have to want it. I don't know. I don't want to get too far, but
Mm-hmm.
I really like this team a lot, and I feel bad for the response because it's really unfair to a lot of these guys.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like you said, I think that this team will be good enough. I don't. I the one concern I will say to me, um, will probably be rim protection. Um, Jaren Jackson Jr. is great, but if he's in foul trouble, I know Walker Kessler's good. But that would be my only concern for this team, really. It's just if Triple J gets into a foul situation, who's going to come in and help out in that sense. But like you said, I think this team is good enough. I think this team has a lot of young players that seem hungry, that seem to want to better themselves in the World Cup, especially in a different stage. I think a lot of these guys have been a part of. I know some of these guys may have been part of like a World Cup team, where it's like the U19s or the U16s.
Mhm.
But it'll be fun to see these guys in like an actual official 2023 FIBA World Cup where they're playing against from all the best teams, right? Luka Doncic is going to be in there. I think Jamal Murray is going to be there. I'm not sure about Jokic. I don't think Jokic will be there, but
I think he's like the only really big one that's not playing.
exactly. And so to me, like I just want to make sure that these guys are getting the best experience too, because you're going to be going against some of the superstars out there as well who aren't American and who are going to probably play with their team and love playing with their team so much. And so
Yeah.
I'm excited for it. We'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. They don't play until the 26th, I believe. I think their schedule goes as follows for the group stages. They're going to play New Zealand first, then they're going to play Greece, and then they're going to play Jordan. Kind of a light group
Yeah.
to start off, so that's not bad. Greece might be a little tough with I think Giannis is playing on this team.
I believe so.
I'd have to double check, but obviously it's probably going to be Greece. And
the biggest one is Canada. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
biggest threat for the U.S. for sure. That team is actually stacked.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, I mean, like I find it humorous that they would pretend like they're scrubs on this Team USA team. Like the only guy I would even remotely be like, okay, we couldn't have done better than Bobby Portis, right? Like that's literally the only guy on the team. It's
Yeah.
the only one I would say, like, there's not a power forward in the league that you would say, let's give this guy a bench role. But I think it's like incredibly disrespectful to guys like Reeves, right? Like Reeves was like third best player like in the Western Conference Finals in a couple games,
Yeah.
That's insanity to pretend like this dude's a scrub. Jalen Brunson, I mean, he was given the Heat work on his own for a few games, and they went to the finals. So, man, I'm very interested to see. But let's talk about the change that the Team USA made. I think we got to get into a
Yeah.
little bit of the nitty gritty, right?
Yeah, I love that transition. You
Um,
lead it. You lead that transition. It's all you, my guy.
you mentioned it. You mentioned it right in the beginning. The first couple set of scrimmage games, Cade Cunningham came in and absolutely just bully balled the Team United States, the actual FIBA team that was there. Which, a little side note, I'll say, I think that's just more a reminder of how talented Cade Cunningham is. I think he's everything people wanted Ben Simmons to be and more. And I think as the years go on, we're going to see it. He's huge. He can play anywhere on the court. And realistically, like what he did against the Team USA team is what he's going to be able to do for a long time.
Yeah.
He's a mismatch for everybody on the court. That being said, they go into the next day. Looks awful. They have not beaten this team of guys, none of which are actually on the team. And what do? They say, let's get some young, fresh blood in here, and let's get the actual alpha male of this team in the starting lineup, and it's Anthony Edwards. And then what did they do? They won every single game they played in those scrimmages the next day. I think it's really interesting that, and who did he take the spot from, Bernie? Do you know off the top of your head? I'm pretty sure
Cam Johnson.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Cam Johnson, which to me I find very interesting that he wasn't already starting in that spot. I think that might be more of a question about his age.
Yeah.
Even then, man, that guy is one of the very few young United States talents, Bernie, that I would say is in like the direct lineage of like kind of the Kobe mentality, right? Where it really seems when I watch Anthony Edwards play, he really wants to dominate dudes. Like he is not out there to just make a paycheck and get to the next game. He is really trying to assert himself on every single possession, and that's what this team needs. Like that's not necessarily Jalen Brunson's strong suit, who's gotten a ton of praise from these coaches. he needs guys around him who physically can do that. That's not his strong suit. Um, this is why I like the construction, combining what we were just talking about with this, this change that Steve Kerr and this coaching
Mm,
staff made. This is why this team is pretty well constructed. They have guys who are going to be able to come off the bench and say, you know what? I might not be starting, but I am actually the best player on this team,
yeah.
you know? And realistically, there are not many nations, period, that have guys that can do anything remotely like that. There might only be one or two, Canada and maybe like Spain or somewhere like that. So I don't know, man. I'm interested. What do you think about Anthony Edwards? I think we're going to end up talking about him again later in this stream. No
Yeah.
spoilers. You might be able to
Yeah.
get some ideas based on our preview earlier in the stream. But what do you think about that change? Why do you think he wasn't starting in the first place, Bernie?
I just think it's kind of like you said, it's a rite of passage in terms of having the older guys start, seeing
Huh?
what they can do, and then eventually it's kind of the same process that you do with any varsity player. You bring the freshmen up to the varsity team, and you don't want to force them to go play right away, but you let them kind of mature, let them nurture, and then eventually, as soon as you see an opportunity where guys aren't performing as they need to, you put that freshman in, or you put that player that's going to dominate in. And I just think that that's kind of what they were doing with Anthony Edwards, but you could
Hmm.
see it from a mile away that Anthony Edwards was going to be a star of the show. We talked about him last year and, the injury, especially in that playoff series against the Lakers. Like, if he didn't have that hurt shoulder, I think that they would have probably won that game uh, against the
Yeah.
Lakers, because it was a tight game. And every time Anthony Edwards had the ball, he was in great position. It's just he was hurt and he had to like chuck up a really bad shot. And, his
Hmm.
jump shot's not there yet, but it's getting closer to where it needs to be. And watching the scrimmages, I believe they're going to actually play tonight against Puerto Rico in a warm up, friendly. So I'll probably be tuning into that as a basketball nerd myself. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch him play, because, to be honest, Pete, he kind of reminds me, and I probably am stealing this from some website or something like that, but he kind of does remind me of like a young Dwayne Wade. Very athletic,
Yeah.
can score at the rim. Like, that's where he was effective. Kind of a quiet assassin in a sense where you don't really hear much about him. And he doesn't really show emotion in the sense that he's never too negative, but he's also never too positive. And that's kind of what reminds me. That's kind of one of the reasons why he reminds me of Dwayne Wade in a sense. Um,
Yeah, I could see that. You know who else he reminds me of? This is like mentality. I get like young Jimmy Butler vibes. Like it just like
mm-hmm.
seems like he has this level of just competitive like monster buried under the surface
Yeah.
where like if the challenge arises, and that's why that Lakers game you brought up was so painful. Like they were so close. They could have really won that game.
Mm-hmm.
He so clearly just couldn't get himself to the point where he knew that he was hurting his team. Which is, I mean, that's a sign. We've seen tons of great players find themselves in that same exact position. So I also think one thing too, that he's 22. He was the youngest player, I'm pretty sure, in his draft class coming out of
Yeah.
Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still, I mean, he's younger than almost anybody on this team. He might actually be the youngest player on this team, even counting Walker Kessler, who's only 1 year removed from his rookie season. He's younger than Walker Kessler.
Dang. That's actually
Yeah,
crazy how young he is.
it's pretty nuts.
But yeah, I think Kate or sorry, well, obviously do want to talk about Kate as well, but just let me finish up a point about Anthony
Yeah,
Edwards. Like I said, I think he's gonna be the star of the show this year. We'll obviously, spoiler alert for the next segment that's coming up. He's gonna be up there on that list if he can continue the
yeah.
trajectory, because I think it is make it or break it season for that squad he's on in Minnesota. So it'll be fun to watch him play. I'm excited to see him play tonight. I know, like I said, they have a warm up friendly against Puerto Rico. Should be fun to watch if you guys aren't doing anything. If there's no sports, which I don't think there is any, maybe baseball, maybe a league cup for soccer. But it'll be fun to watch that team play and really see all those guys play. Like I said, but I'll move on to kind of the main star of the show. Like you said, you kind of talked about it, Cade Cunningham. I just want to show a little bit of this film really quick, dominating with his passes. I know this is a little dark, but from Team USA basketball, they're kind of showing you Cade in the scrimmage right now, dominating tremendously again, finding open guys, hitting guys on alley oops with Jalen Duren, Jalen Williams, or sorry, Jalen Green, excuse me. There's another player that was on this team as well. Uh, Again, as you can kind of see here, like I'm excited for Jalen Duren and his up and coming next season. And Peyton Pritchard as well on the select team. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch these guys play. I'm excited for it. When they get their opportunity to play for Team USA. But even just coming into next season, I think Cade will be one of those players that will definitely shock a lot of people, because obviously I was so hyped on the Pistons last season, but unfortunately due to that Cade Cunningham injury, it just it all petered off and did not go to plan. But I am excited to see where this all ends up going for Cade, and kind of the confidence booster he needs going into his next season, especially coming off an injury. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be exciting. And like you said, Pete, like he has a chance to be up there on a top list of top 15, top
For
20
sure.
players if he continues his trajectory. But he's going to have to need some wins for that squad in Detroit, which I'm hoping that he can get. With the
Well,
revived squad.
going off that, like, it's something that really cracks me up, Bernie, as like a fan of like the history of basketball, like an avid, like, I love basketball. I look at stuff that happened before I was born almost every day, just out of pure, like, I want to see more of the sport because that's just what I do to entertain myself, right? I just find it so funny, the short-term memory of people, Like, people act like this team losing to the select team is like this atrocity. Like, it's how could you, this is the team representing our country and they just lost all these games to the select team. They're acting like these aren't professional basketball players that they're playing against. They're playing against Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, Jalen Williams. They're playing against this crop of young talent who has absolutely nothing to lose in this game. They're going in with all the expectations that they're going to get absolutely trampled by this team of veterans. But when they go in, they're all playing free. They're not playing with any expectations on their shoulders other than let's just play our best and win, right? Dream Team in 1992 lost to a select team, okay? That is a team that had Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley, David Robinson, Karl Malone, Scottie Pippen, John Stockton, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, literally 10 of the greatest players of all time. And they lost to a select team that had these names on it: Chris Webber, Grant Hill, Bobby Hurley, Anthony Hardaway, Allen Houston, Jamal Mashburn, Eric Montross, Rodney Rogers. We like come off it, acting like losing to Cade Cunningham and these guys is that crazy. Michael Jordan and all those guys lost to Jamal Mashburn and these other dudes. That's crazy to just assume that, it's over for these guys. Look at these scrubs. Like, there's just no effort to look at the history of basketball and understand, like, this is a game where the best team does not always win.
Yeah.
Honestly, winning is not always necessarily the point. You as a coach, Bernie, you know this. These are scrimmages. You're not playing to win a scrimmage. You're playing to figure out what you can fix going into actual games that matter. And what happened in the scrimmage? They made an adjustment and then they came out and won the games with Anthony Edwards. So I just think people need to take a step back and stop thinking just because one game happens and something embarrassing happens, it's the end of the world, man. Because really, look at how the guys on the team responded. They all kind of chuckled and like, we'll get them tomorrow, and they did. So I don't know, man. Go watch the Redeem Team documentary and see how it went for LeBron and Carmelo and Dwayne Wade. And that team was terrible by the standard that they had. And they had every big name they could have had, and it still didn't go well.
Yeah.
Just doesn't matter. That's what the league is now, man. It is a clout. How much does your name open doors? How much do you have name brand recognition in terms of marketability? People think that's what makes good basketball players, but it just truly isn't the sport, man. It's
No.
just not. It's not how it works.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, it's gonna be a fun and interesting World Cup World Cup games all the way till September 10th. Gonna be a lot of fun to see which guys step up and which guys can do their thing. But let us know in the comment section down below, who do you guys think will win the World Cup? Do you guys think the Team USA still gets the gold, still wins the whole thing, or do you think that there's another team out there like a Greece that could potentially win the whole World Cup? I'd love to know what you guys think in the comment section down below, and who you guys think could win against in the World Cup. Is it going to be Team USA or will it be another team? Let us know in the comment section down below.